Happy Hispanic Heritage Month, everybody. This is the Slider Review. I'm here today to talk to you about House of Buggin. This show was a Latino themed comedy sketch show, but sadly it was short-lived with only 10 episodes. The show premiered on the Fox network from, I believe it might have been January 95 to April 95. And I remember as like a preteen, or maybe I was a teen at that time. Yeah, I was like a teenager at that time. Like the only sketch comedy show I ever watched was In Living Color at that time. I wasn't into SNL at that time. And for the most part, I'm still not into SNL. Like I only started watching SNL whenever Pamela Anderson came on, and then I watched it for a couple of years after that. Then I stopped for like over a decade, and then I started picking it up again. But now I'm kind of like, whatever. They're not as funny as they used to be. So I just watched like the weekend updates and maybe like the intro teaser thing. But then like the other sketch comedy show I ever watched was Mad TV. Funny note is that like the show House of Buggin, it was a replacement for In Living Color, and they used the same format. But because ratings weren't doing that well, and in their last episode, it dropped by like 50%, it was canceled and then replaced by Mad TV, still on the same network as Fox. And in fact, two of the stars from House of Bugging went over to Mad TV. One was like, a regular, and the other one just kind of like appeared. I don't remember much about this show, to be completely honest. Like, I do remember watching it back in the day. And then as the decades passed, I remember thinking to myself, what was that show John Leguizamo was on? Like, I remember him being on a sketch comedy show, and I remember it being Latino themed, but I couldn't remember the name, and I couldn't really remember much about it. Then I went and looked at the intro. I'm like, oh, okay, I remember that intro of him dancing and everything. Boy, I sure do miss 90s dancing. 90s dancing, especially in the early and mid 90s, was all about long leg movements that was like crisp, wide, and twirly and everything. And like, you would extend your legs out along, and then you would kind of like do like a spin, and it's mostly about leg extension and stuff. And so, but other than that, I really don't remember none of the episodes. Thankfully, they are up on YouTube to watch, along with like some sketches from like Mad TV and stuff like that. But the whole episodes of House of Buggin is still available on YouTube. And I always love that name, House of Buggin. Like just hearing the word buggin with the IN and not ING. I wish to God I could remember, like, just one sketch from this show. So instead, I'm just going to rewatch it and then give my thoughts on that at the end of the video. However, one cool thing about this show that I do remember is that it was Latino themed. A lot of the stars, well, pretty much all of them, there was only like 6 cast members. All of them had like some type of like Latino or like Hispanic in them, except for one cast member. I think he was just white, but I'm not 100% sure on him. But everything I found online just suggests that he's white. And the fact that it was Latino Hispanic theme is really saying something for not only the Fox network, but just like, Hollywood in general, because before In Living Color, which was predominantly black, you really and honestly didn't see too many like sketch variety comedy shows of color in Hollywood. Like decades prior, they were all dominated by white and Jewish people and stuff. And I haven't really watched that many sketch comedy shows. You know, I watch In Living Color, House of Buggin, Mad TV, SNL, and The Amanda Show. Other than that, I really haven't watched any other variety sketch shows because in today's time, they're like non-existent except for SNL. And you know, that really does say something that like at some point in time, they was willing to take a chance on like diversity. And this was really cool because people got to see themselves on television. But sadly, like I said before, it was short-lived after just 10 episodes. In fact, they was trying to get a second season, and the network told John, who was the creator or co-creator of the show, that all right, we'll bring the show back for a second season, but we want to recast everybody. And he refused and everything. And, you know, I had nothing but respect for that because he was willing to only do the show if it had his cast. Now, it makes you wonder who was they going to recast in the second season. Like, I know everybody was going to get recast except for John, but, like, what was the new cast going to look like? Like, you know what I'm saying? Now, John Leguizamo is probably the most famous person to come from this show. I've seen him in a couple of projects and movies and stuff, like the Super Mario Brothers movie. I saw him in that Amazon show called Power, and I've seen him in some other stuff pop up here and there, like Kick-Ass. And like, you know, and I told you before he was in, I think, Tu Wong Fu or something like that, where he dressed like a drag queen. Never seen that movie, but like, you know, it's one of those like classics and stuff. Stereotypical, yes, but hey, you know what I'm saying. And so he is the co-creator of this show along with David Barr Kratz. And so, like, when it comes to that of, like, John, he's actually of a mixed race. He is indigenous Colombian, he has European in him, and he has Afro-Black ancestry in him. And, you know, the dude is like hilarious and stuff. And once again, nothing more but respect for him for not wanting to replace his cast members. And the thing I always liked about John as an actor, he strives for like diversity in Hollywood. He knows what Hollywood is all about and who they like to cast and who they don't. So I love it when he tries to bring representation to the platform and stuff. Luis Guzman is probably the second like most famous person from this show, and he's Puerto Rican. My bad on the Wednesday second review, I said he was Mexican. I completely forgot because in season 1 I said that, you know, he was Puerto Rican because I forgot Jenna Ortega is half Mexican and half Puerto Rican. Now, which side of the Puerto Rican aisle does he fall on? Is it more like white European or like black African? I have no idea. But I know he used to have a short-lived show called Luis on Fox and stuff. But now currently you can catch him as Gomez Adams on the Netflix Wednesday show, if they get picked up for a third season, which I believe they have. Jorge Luis Abreu, he is Afro-Cuban. Tammy Caballeti, she is, I'm trying to think, I think she's Afro-Caribbean, I believe. She's like Afro-LATINX of like Caribbean and stuff. Yaba Osoro, now known as McCourt, she is actually John's ex-wife. They were married, I believe, from 94 to 96. And I'm trying to think. I think she's Honduras, which I believe is Central America, I believe. And the last cast member is David Herman, who went on to go on to Mad TV. He is white from what I can read online, and I don't believe he has any Latino in him. If he does, then I can't find it. After rewatching like the pilot episode, I still don't remember this. Like, I don't remember this at all. But I remember the intro of him dancing. And while the show is funny, yes, it didn't have like that really like edgy rawness that like In Living Color or say Mad TV had. They really pushed the boundaries of what was like offensive and stuff. I would say this would be more on par with like what SNL has become like now. But it was really cool in the pilot to see John like speak Spanish and stuff. Like he really wanted to represent like the Spanish culture and stuff like that, you know, or Spanish speaking culture and stuff. Because he said that, you know, this was the first and only like, you know, Latino comedy sketch theme type show. And because in Hollywood, you're just not gonna see that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I still don't think we've seen that, like, till this day and stuff. And this was like, what, 30 something years ago? You know, it sucks that this show was short lived and everything because since then, at least for me, I haven't seen no other Latino comedy sketch shows, variety type shows in like America. Maybe there are some, but I just never like seen any of them. I know they have tons of them in like Latino Spanish speaking countries and stuff. But over here in America, I haven't seen much of any. Because pretty much now, only SNL dominates like the variety sketch comedy show and stuff. But like I said before, it was really cool that Fox was willing to take a chance on like diversity back in the day. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.